Here we are today, another episode of Marketers and Founders, and we're with Carlos González, and he is the CEO, founder of Product School. So, Carlos, tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got interested in product, and what was your journey like getting started in startups?
Mm-hmm. Well, thanks for having me. I'm the founder of Product School, and my story behind the scenes is that I started my career as a software engineer. I knew and I learned how to code, but it was never my passion. I think I was good enough, but I soon realized that I was never going to be the best. I think having a technical background always gave me an edge to learn how to build something without asking for much help. Mm-hmm. But at some point, I always started asking questions about, okay, but why am I coding this? Or how can we connect this to the business side? How can we make money? Mm-hmm. And that is not being taught in computer science. So when I moved to the Bay Area, and originally from Spain, then is when I started meeting other people like myself that have a technical background but are thinking business. Mm-hmm. So throughout my careers, I worked as a software engineer first, and then I started multiple companies. I've started 3 companies, and the 3 of them are in the education space. Mm-hmm. Mostly because I've always been trying to fix my own problems. I always thought that there had to be a more efficient way to learn what I wanted to learn. Mm-hmm. And I always thought that there were other people that could teach that to me other than the traditional teachers. So I did offline learning. In my second company, I did online learning, and then in this third company, I'm back to offline learning. I'm the founder of Product School, and what we do is we teach product management. We have 5 campuses, so 2 of them are in Los Angeles, 2 of them are in San Francisco Bay Area, and 1 is in New York. And the reason why I started Product School is because this is a solution to my own problem. First, I'm a software engineer that broke into product management by starting multiple companies, and nobody really taught me how to do this thing. Even though I also went to business school, but I kind of see product as the intersection between technology and business. And none of the books, or very few of the books that I had to read when I was in business school, apply to what I have to do as a product manager these days. And then suddenly I realized that this is a problem that is not just mine. There are thousands of hundreds of thousands of people, especially in these major tech hubs, that also want to become product managers, not just software engineers.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think my background is a little bit similar. I did like a coding boot camp, so I know how it is. And then all of a sudden you're like, okay, I now have this knowledge, but then you join a startup and they don't even need to build a product more. They're just trying to find product market fit, right? And then you're like, well, I'm not even going to do any code. We're just like arguing over basic business stuff. Like I gotta go learn business. It's so funny. So tell us about a couple of the projects you're working on now. You said you have a community of over 5,000 people that have actually like attended in person, whether it be like your events or that have participated in product school as well. So give us some idea behind that.
Yeah, so I like that question because this group is about marketers and founders. And sometimes as marketers, we tend to kind of inflate numbers and be like, my community is hundreds of thousands of emails, where in reality there is much value just for the email, right? You want some level of engagement. So for us, it's all about like physical interactions. It's people coming to any of our campuses and learning something. Could be in an event format or could be in a longer course format, but like really coming to our place. So over 5,000 students have graduated from either courses or events. And the idea is that this is a place where you can learn and you don't have to stop your life or quit your job. This is something that as a lifelong learner, I take to heart. Like when I was a student, I had to stop, spend 5 years in computer science, then go back to real life, then I realized I don't like that, then go back to business school, spend another 2 years, then go back to real life. And this is a place where you can continue with your job, and then you can come at night to learn something, or during weekends, the same way you can go to the gym or do something else.
So give us an idea of like how big the market is for product management, because you have all these people that are coming out of college with what they think is like experience, and they have this piece of paper and they can't get a job in tech, right? Yeah. And they have all these people who get a job in tech and maybe it's their first job and they realize they don't want to do it. Because I mean, you go through probably maybe 8 jobs during the period of your 20s, right? Trying to figure out what you want to do. And once they nail it down, they're like, okay, I want to go to product. And what the journey is like for like these individuals.
Yeah, good. So product is hard. It's something that you would probably think right away out of college. At least it took me time, and it takes time, because in order to be a manager, I believe you need to have some experience on the ground. Yeah. So I believe that it's always good to start as a specialist. It could be as an engineer or designer or marketer, but really being on the ground, building something, understanding how everything works at a low level. And then from there, you can decide if you want to continue growing as a specialist and be great at that, or you want to move more towards the people management side and be more of a generalist. I think product management is being a generalist in tech. It's knowing enough about engineering, design, and marketing, and working with teams so you can build something bigger than yourself.
Yeah.
That's why most of our students and attendees to events have full-time jobs. They are usually 5-10 years out of school because they had some experience before. Now they know what they want, but they at the same time don't want to stop their life. They want to continue learning, and that's where we found our sweet spot.
So you mentioned this idea of product managers being more of a generalist. Now there's this new phrase that's come out. I've seen it on LinkedIn titles, but it's like growth product manager, right? So is that because they're helping grow like the entire team? Give us some idea behind that.
So now product is cool. It's kind of the new buzzword. So everybody's adding product to whatever they do. You are going to see that now software engineers are being called themselves product engineers. UX designers call themselves product designers. Marketers call themselves product marketers. Everything is product. So I think a few years ago, obviously coding is bigger. Like you need to have enough coders in order to require enough managers. So I see this market as probably 1/10 of the coding market. That's kind of the common ratio in a company. For every 7 to 10 engineers, there is usually one product manager. And then obviously as the companies grow, then you need some intermediate roles. So when the companies are very small, even the founder is acting as the product manager. You don't really need to hire a product manager. It gets to a point you need to delegate. And it gets to a point you start building more products. So you will see that as the company grows, you are going to need some project managers, product marketers, product designers, and everything in between.
And I think, touching on that point, that some of the best founders, they come from engineering backgrounds very similar to you, and then they learn product management, so they understand product market fit and actually like how to grow a product like effectively and not make a bunch of the dumb mistakes, right? That either like marketers are making or founders with little experience in engineering are making. It's very funny how that works out.
That's very true. Obviously, depending on the market where we are, we see like a predominant background. So especially in the Bay Area, a lot of our students come from software engineering. You'll be surprised, in New York, most of our students come from management, consulting, or finance. That makes them great product managers. They have extremely fast learning skills and analytical skills. They just need to translate that into tech. And in LA, it's a mix, but we also have a lot of designers, marketers, and people in the media and entertainment industry.
So give me an idea of when you're expanding to a new city, like what do you look for and how do you analyze a city before you jump in and say, hey, we're going to build a school here? That's a big deal. I mean, you have a lot of troops on the ground, Yeah,
I think you can look at multiple parameters before you make that decision, but none of those parameters are going to be enough. At some point, you need to be there on the ground and really understand the environment. And that's something that I take to heart. I think growing is great and we all want to grow, but at the same time, you don't want to sacrifice quality. And that's something we've been doing consistently. So when we go to a new market, we tend to understand what's the real demand for tech in general. And then what's the real demand for coding in general. I think there's a huge correlation between coding and product, as I explained before. There's also a huge correlation between number of co-working spaces and demand for tech jobs, because that means that people care enough about building something and doing something that is not just movies in LA or finance in New York. And you will see that there's a huge trend in those markets. So once we understand that that's kind of like a macro trend, then we also look at mini trends, which is we set up landing pages or campaigns to kind of gather interest from our own community about where we should build the next cool. So based on all of that, then we go and touch ground and then really talk with the local experts to decide if we can do this or not. That's how we've been growing so far.
Wow. Yeah, I think, does it become easier once you go through like 2 cities and the maybe like the 4th one, 5th one, all of a sudden you're like, okay, I get it, it's happening? Or is it still like, there's something new every single time, right?
I learned this quote from a friend of mine who owns a hotel chain. And he said that opening the 2nd hotel was harder than opening the 80th hotel. But at the same time, I think it never gets any easier in the sense that you always face new challenges, right? So once we kind of established in the main tech hubs, it makes more sense for us to also open other courses related to product management instead of maybe opening in a secondary or tertiary market. And that's the approach that we're taking now. Now it's not just about opening cities for the sake of putting a flag. It's also about, okay, you can learn product management in this case, but example, in LA or New York, people that don't bring a technical background also need to learn coding or data or tactical skills so they can become this full stack product manager. So we are also offering these different short courses to supplement what they need.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think there is like so much overlap that occurs, and if they don't understand, they're coming like entirely fresh. I mean, they have to. They don't have a choice, right? So tell me a little bit about like the expectations like coming into your course, and then what you expect people to understand, like believe about themselves, or the skill sets they should have after they leave.
Yeah, so for us, it's very important to filter students that we accept into the program. This was a hard decision I had to make at the very beginning. Imagine, I was teaching all the classes, doing everything myself, and if someone came to me saying, hey, I want to pay you, it's hard to say no if you don't believe that the person has true chances to get a job afterwards, right? So we made those right choices at the very beginning, and we keep doing them. So for us, it's very important that students have at least 5 years of experience, and relevant experience. They also hopefully have a current full-time job or a reason why they are not currently working, because it's always easier to get another job when you have a job. It also gives you more confidence. And they are also in a position where they can also invest time into learning, because it's not just sitting on the class and then hoping to get a job because you just took a class. It's also about putting work outside of class. So if you meet all of those requirements and you go through the whole admission process, then we can accept you into the program.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that I've seen, like General Assembly, and I don't want to name any other names, but I don't know who's watching, but that they skip over. They'll take almost anybody. They're like, hey, you're willing to pay us? You have ambition? You are in.
I know.
And it's like, don't do that, no.
I mean, it's like open the floodgates too early, and I was the lead instructor of product management for General Assembly before I started product school, and I kind of felt that pain. Teaching product is great, but at the same time, as an instructor, you also want to make sure that students are in a position to take advantage of that learning. And my classes there were too big, to be honest. In that class, I also had people with good experience, but at the same time, I had too many fresh grads, people without the right motivation. So it's very frustrating for the instructor, because you have to meet in the middle, and nobody really wins. Advanced students still get bored because they want more, they deserve more, while fresh grads still get lost because they don't have enough experience to relate to those cases we are discussing. So for us, it was very important to reduce the class size, focus just on people that need help with the final push, and also add some career support so we can assist with the next step.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think as soon as you like focus on the quality of everything, like as painful as it is, and as much as like you want to see like high numbers, right? At the end of the day, like programs like yours, and I think many other educational programs are heavily built on referrals. You will never get a single referral if someone doesn't get their desired result coming out of the program. And it's just simple as it is, right?
I agree. I mean, I think growth is great, and growth hacking and marketing, but there are certain things you can't growth hack. Like you can't sacrifice quality. It's easy to say, I know it's really hard, and we all have opportunities to kind of game the system every day, but it's like part of the culture of the company and the founders to really incentivize teams to do the right thing.
Yeah, I think that's also, it's funny that you say that, because when I look at like some of the stuff that I'm doing, a lot of it ties back to like writing. And I can't growth hack my writing skills, right? I spent almost a year as a copywriter, and I've written like over 1,000 articles. So it's much different for me than like other people if they want to like copy me and be like, oh, start like growth hacking, right? It doesn't work that way. Yeah, sometimes you do have to take the harder route. So as someone who has a ton of experience with product management and engineering, now you're in the startup hub, which is Silicon Valley. So you're seeing all these startups like skyrocket, then fall all the way down, make like a big splash. What are some of the things that founders are skipping over when they're starting companies, and what are things that are working really well for them that you think is like crucial to starting a company? And maybe like you've had some personal friends that have started companies and you're like, man, they did it right.
Yeah, I mean, I've been there. As I told you before, I've started 3 companies, and my previous company especially was exactly the opposite of what I'm doing now. It was an online learning instead of offline learning. It was a venture-backed company instead of bootstrapped, and it wasn't profitable. So in this case, it's the opposite. So what I learned from that experience first is that it's not like right or wrong answer. Like you can really raise money and grow fast. You can decide to maybe don't raise money and focus on making money and growing slower. Whatever you pick, I think it's important to understand where you're playing. And for me, it's really important to spend my time on my customers, which in this case are my students, my team. And I feel completely relieved. Honestly, I don't think I would be able to come to this realization without having some failures. So my biggest piece of advice, and that's the same I tell the students, is build something. Instead of like being worried about what's my man going to think, what's the market going to think, like build something. It's so cheap to do it. It's more about finding time and committing to something. Like we still get students that come to us saying, I want to get a product manager job at Google. Can't you get me a product manager job at Google after taking your class? Sounds ridiculous, but still people think this way. And I mean, that doesn't work. I mean, I always tell them, if I could promise you a job at Google just because you take a 2-month class, I will charge you $30,000 instead of $3,000.
Yeah.
So it's building something and mean it. Like it's like when someone signs up for the gym. First step is, yes, to pay the membership, but then you also have to show up every day. And you can expect that the first 2 months are not going to be great.
Yeah.
But at some point you kind of get addicted, right?
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, I think about, reminds me of experience that I had. So in order to get an interview at Facebook, I had been applying for 3 years, like 3 years. And on the 3rd year, I finally got an interview. But this was after like spending thousands of dollars on Facebook ads. And I wrote a book about Facebook, and I was working in SQL, and I was working in Python. And then I finally got an interview. And to say like you can get that in 3 months, to me is just like mind boggling, right? It's impossible. And by that time I had other options too. So that was like the great part about it. But yeah, it's not easy at all. You just need the right direction to skip over a lot of the hard stuff, the mistakes that you make along the way, and turn those 3 years more into like, hopefully like a year and a half, right? And I think that's a big part of it.
I agree.
So jumping into like some of the biggest misconceptions that people have about product management, name like 1 or 2 of those.
Well, first misconception is that you think that as a product manager you're going to put your feet on the table and then you are the manager. And people listen to you. But it doesn't work this way, unfortunately. You also have to hustle, and it's not like a super strategic position where you're calling the shots like Steve Jobs and then people execute for you. You are also working directly with engineers, designers, and marketers. So you have to assume that. And even obviously as you grow in your career and you have more product managers, you might become more strategic.
Yeah.
But we also have to be realistic about where we are and where we can go 2 months from now.
That makes a lot of sense. I think as soon as there's like manager in the title, people are like, oh, so you're saying that I'm going to be over people, like telling them what to do. It's like, you are a project manager. They're like, oh no, so funny. So jumping back into startup life, and I want to hear a little bit about like your either startup wins, well actually both, startup wins, stuff that went really well for you, and then stuff that didn't go so well for you. So I love this stuff because like the more emotional details, right?
Let's start with the stuff that didn't work. Or at least in the short term. What stuff didn't work is my 2 previous companies. That's why I have a 3rd company. If I was successful with any of the previous companies, I'll probably continue growing that.
Yeah,
and
true.
Something that I'm very, very proud of is that as an immigrant or as an international, I've been able to really expand internationally. Like I started my first company in Spain. I started my 2nd company in South America, in Chile. I started my 3rd company in the US. And having that mentality has allowed me to hire and work with people from all over the world without thinking about it. I look for good people no matter where they are that want to do good things.
Yeah.
And because I had to earn that by always being an international, now I like to remove that barrier and collaborate with people no matter where they are.
It's fun, like once you cross the barrier and you start crushing it, you're like, there we go. And you're looking back and you're like, just like pulling people up, right?
Yeah,
left and right. It's an awesome feeling.
And the good thing about it is that because I've been there and I know how important for people outside of the US or Silicon Valley it is to be in those tech hubs. They truly appreciate the opportunity and hustle and work really hard. Sometimes when we spend too much time in certain bubbles, we kind of take things for granted.
Dude, entirely agree. So like, I'm not originally from Silicon Valley, and I'm from San Diego, and there's like no tech down there. There's probably 2 software companies, and I was working for one of them. And I was working far harder than I work now. I was like waking up at 4 a.m., then going to sleep at like 11, just like working constantly. And then when I moved up here, I was like, there's 17x more opportunity. And I couldn't believe it. It's just like bringing the same mentality just made a world of difference. People were like, how are you doing what you're doing? And I'm like, well, there's a lot of opportunity up here. And they're all just entirely blind to it. I'm like, you walk down the block and you're walking past like 10 tech companies, right? And 3 VC firms. I'm like, this is like gold. So yeah, 100% agree with you on that. So diving back into like your product school, and I want to talk about the aspects of community because I think community is so important, especially around education-based companies. So tell us about how you keep your community engaged and some of like the more scalable methods, because again, you're in a number of cities and it's not always easy if you're trying to create content for each city, right? So give me some idea.
So In order to create opportunity for people to learn more about product management, we've offered different formats, low commitment or high commitment formats. The lowest level of commitment is obviously to join our newsletter or Slack community, and then you can participate in live chats with product managers or webinars from home. The second tier is to actually attending to our events on campus, and we do events twice events a week in every single campus. We like to invite product managers from Google, Facebook, Snapchat. We also like to ask them about war stories, about things that didn't work out, which is amazing. And that's also low commitment for the speakers itself. It's like an hour of their time to give back to the community because they've been there. They know how hard it is to break into product. And then there is a next tier, which is taking an actual course, which is committing for 2 months part-time, so Tuesdays and Thursdays at night or Saturdays in the morning, to actually learn how to build product from every single angle and also how to get a product management job. So I think giving people options but still being focused on a topic, which in our case is product, is what's making us really grow a community completely segmented about what we can help with. Like, we are not the best at design or other disciplines. We prefer to be number one at just one thing but do it really well.
Yeah. And I think that's really important because when you're pitching a value proposition to anyone, you're really just focused on like one main benefit. And now what is that one main benefit, right? And I think people often forget that. They start trying to stack the benefits and then it just lowers the quality of each single one, right? And then it just distracts people. So diving back into like your community and give me some idea of like how fast it's growing. What are your expectations for like the next like year or 2 years? Do you expect to be in more cities? And are you expect like hiring more people? I know there's probably people listening right now that are looking for job opportunities and whatnot. So
2.5, almost 3 years ago, it was just myself from home doing phone calls. 3 years later, now we are a team with 5 offices in the US. We're about to open the 6th one in Irvine, in the Orange County area.
Awesome.
And we have plans to keep opening more campuses in the US. Another important growth strategy for us is to offer more courses under the umbrella of product. So now we also teach coding for managers, as I was discussing before. It's about, so if you are a software engineer that want to be a product manager, product management course is good enough. If you come from a background that is not technical, it's also important to earn the respect of your engineers. So we teach coding for people that don't want to be engineers. It's kind of counterintuitive because most of the coding bootcamps train people to become engineers. We teach coding to people that don't want to be engineers. We are now about to do the same with data. We want to teach people how to run SQL queries, how to understand Google Analytics. Every single skill that is going to make you a better manager, assuming that you will have a team of specialists that will be able to execute for you. But it's good in these days, especially in tech, to know enough. You can't just be this strategic leader. You also need to be tactical enough, and that's where we are. It's kind of like a replacement or a new tech business school.
Yeah.
We want to replace the traditional MBA in which people have to spend 2 years full-time, take a huge loan, and still say to this day, I want to be a product manager, and then come to product school to try to fix all their problems in just 2 months for 1/5 of the price.
Yeah, probably even less, right? MBA is so expensive, and you think about the opportunity cost regarding like your time too. So you have years of time like studying, and I'm not gonna hate on it too much because my sister's getting her MBA. She might be watching this and she hears enough from me, but
And I think MBA is great depending on your goal. Again, I mean, if you want to increase your network or you want to work in finance or consulting, I'm sure there are a lot of opportunities. But if you know that you want to work in tech and you want to be a manager in tech, I know there are way more efficient ways to try. And then, hey, if you don't like it, you can still take the traditional route.
True. Yeah, I think even with MBAs though, at the same time, I do feel like there are just so many more options, right? Just start creating. Like you had mentioned this before, go create something and you'll learn from there. And start with like the bare minimum of solving a pain point and like really focusing, again, like what you're saying regarding like find your value prop. Don't make it like 3 different things, just make it one and just build something that solves it, like the very basics of it.
I think there's a lot of value in trying to learn something when you need it versus when the time schedule is saying that you're going to learn it. When I was a student, I took amazing classes I wish I could take now.
Yeah.
And I think this concept of lifelong learning, of like product, marketing, coding, whatever that is, like, but being able to learn it when you need it is really powerful.
Yeah. I think there's very few people that can do that, and I think part of it is maybe they just don't see enough value in it, right? And as soon as they realize that you do that enough time, you solve enough problems, and you create something pretty powerful. And it's like as simple as going to Google, right? And just be like, type in the question, and if you can't find the answer there, go to Upwork, put a job posting there, and then message them, and maybe they'll give you a free answer, and you won't even have to pay for anything. I didn't say that, but you can do that. Cool, man. So like, give me some idea of like, you're, as a founder, like you're working a lot with your employees. Now, what do you look for like when you hire people? Because one of the things that I found is that hiring is one of the most painful processes that exists.
I know.
So give us some details.
And that's where I spend most of my time. So it's very important, and the same I would tell to students. If we're an education company, we need to predict with the example, and we need people that are hungry to learn. It doesn't mean that they don't need to know anything. They need to know a lot in the specific area. So if they are doing product, marketing, design, whatever that is, but you have to have an amazing attitude to be always hungry and never take things for granted. Because I know what it is to take the company from 0 to 10, let's say. But once we are in the level 20 or 100, I don't want anyone to relax. I see the company as, or any company that with the goal of growing up and to the right, and every employee is responsible for keeping up to the pace, if not going above that line. Otherwise, that's not going to work. You know, like things that work at this stage might not work in the next stage. And I'm all for always moving on. So everybody has to have that hunger. Yeah,
that makes sense. It's hard to find those people. How, do you look in your network, or what are you using? Like, are you using recruiters? Give me some idea.
I hope, and fortunately now I have a big network, especially with Product School. We have a huge community of people that are great at product, marketing, engineering. So my first resources always go through word of mouth or my own community, because they also know us, so it accelerates the process. Sometimes you don't find the person in your community, and then you need to take external sources, and that's fine too. But in general, I take recruiting very seriously, because and I tell this to every candidate, when I'm making a hire, I'm looking for this person to grow with the company. I think the biggest failure would be that this person has to leave in the first months for whatever reason. Like you are going to invest, they are going to invest a lot of time, but at the same time, the company is going to invest a lot of time in training this employee and putting them in a room where there are a lot of other people. So that can make it or break it, especially at the stage where everybody knows each other by their name.
So just jumping back into like marketing, product school, I'm really interested in how you try to understand attribution, right? So you have a pretty big price point because it is education, and you have someone that maybe looks at a Facebook ad, goes to an in-person event, and then and maybe like a couple other touch points, and then they decide to join, right? So as being the head of growth of a boot camp before, this is one of our hardest problems that we came across. And we noticed that 90% of our people that came into our community always had like also a referral touch point. So we're trying to see, you know, which one was the one that we should focus on, right? So give us some idea of how you handle all of that stuff. Because I think there are other people out there too, in the audience that sell like products that cost $5,000, $10,000, and there's so many touch points that go into that, and they're looking to solve this issue.
Well, I think everything starts with understanding your user. Really, when I say understanding your user, I'm not talking about my user is between 25 to 35 that live in this city, that's his level of income. I'm talking about really understanding the user in terms of like where this person works, what type of responsibilities this person have, what's the major pain point, does this person have the money and the commitment to do this? And for us, it's very clear the two type of users that we have. So once we understand that, then we also know that this is not an impulsive purchase. This is not something that you could buy online like you buy, I don't know, a hamburger on McDonald's, right? Or a Postmates.
True.
You really want to learn. It's a two-way process. So you can't pay for this online. You need to apply, and then you need to interact with the school. And we have a system with multiple touch points in which we involve at least 2 people, if not 3, every single time we decide to extend an acceptance letter to student. And then we have kind of a hiring committee. So we treat this as a recruiting for us. So every student is validated by multiple people in the team. So they feel confident that this is the right fit for them, and vice versa.
Cool. And I just want to jump into the audience and see, you know, what would you tell them if there's people in the audience right now looking to join product school? Go for it.
Well, we are always looking for, it depends on what you're looking for. But if you want to learn product management, we can help with that. But if you're also looking for joining a tech startup, we're always hiring. We look for people that are hungry, that they want to positions mostly in marketing or sales or operations. Those are the most common roles for us. We have now 5, soon 6 campuses. So we have local teams in LA, San Francisco, and New York. Hopefully, we'll open more campuses soon. And if you want more information, you want to connect with me, I think the easiest way to do that is via email. I'm carlos@productschool.com. But if you also want to check out our current openings or courses, just go to productschool.com.
So carlos@productschool.com. Make sure to send them an email if you're looking to join or if you're looking for advice. And is there any social channels they can connect with you on too?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter. My handle is complicated, so let's start with my last name is complicated. I'm Carlos González de Villaumbrosia, so my handle is @Villaumbrosia. Google me or find me on LinkedIn and then copy the last name and put it on Twitter. Those are the most common channels. I'm on Slack. We have a big Slack community as well, and you can join for free from the website. I think that's the easiest way to connect.
So, one of the reasons I brought Carlos here today is because he does something very similar to what I do, and he runs a community, and it's a community of educating people, and I think it's very remarkable. And not a lot of people are willing to step into that leadership position and sort of own the responsibility of helping others, right? And getting them to their next level on their journey. And it's so big for so many people. And again, one of the things you mentioned earlier is in Silicon Valley, we take it for granted. But coming from outside, we really see that we should be a helping hand. So thank you for that, much appreciated.
Thank you for having me.
So thank you, Carlos, for coming today and taking your time. And this has been another episode of Marketers and Founders. You can reach out to him via email, Twitter, and I sure hope you do because he has a lot of value to offer. And I think we do have one question before we go. So when are schools across the country going to mandate coding as part of their curriculum?
That's a great question. I wish, and actually I wish MBAs, business schools, even not technical careers, start teaching a little bit of coding or data or how to be a little more technical. That's what we're trying to build.
Yeah, I think part of it is also that they're solving this issue by creating an alternative, right? So it's not so much that you can either wait for these colleges to implement this over the next 10 years, maybe 20 years, or you could just do it like you did.
Yeah. And the other way around, I wish in technical schools they also teach a little bit more about business and design. I think everybody should know a little bit of everything and have options, and then you can decide.
Awesome. So here we go. Carlos González, CEO, founder of Product School, here today with us. Thank you so much for taking your time, and this has been another episode of Marketers and Founders. Cheers, guys.